The Doll in the Attic. In a quiet, forgotten town nestled deep in the woods, there was a house no one dared to visit. It wasn't the peeling paint, the creaking floorboards, or even the wild vines that strangled its walls that scared people away. It was the stories. Tales of a ghost, trapped inside a doll, whispered fearfully from one generation to the next. Claire didn't believe in ghosts. She was a journalist, grounded in facts and logic, and she'd heard about the house from an elderly woman in town who swore the doll in the attic had eyes that followed her. It sounded like a great story, a way to expose local superstitions and maybe even draw some attention to the forgotten town. She was determined to investigate. The house was easy to find. It loomed at the end of a dirt road, its broken windows glinting in the fading sunlight. Claire parked her car and stepped out, camera and notebook in hand. The air seemed colder near the house, and the wind carried a faint, eerie whistle as it slipped through the cracks of the decaying structure. Just an old house, Claire muttered to herself. Inside, the house was even worse. Dust coated every surface, and the smell of mildew hung in the air. The furniture, left untouched for decades, sagged under the weight of time. She climbed the stairs cautiously, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The attic door was half open. Claire hesitated. She didn't know why, but something about the door felt wrong. She pushed it open the rest of the way, and her flashlight caught a shape in the corner, a small rocking chair. And on the chair sat a doll. It was old, Victorian maybe, with porcelain skin that had cracked over the years. Its eyes were a piercing blue, glassy and unnervingly lifelike. Long curls of dusty golden hair framed its delicate face, and it wore a once beautiful lace dress now yellowed with age. Claire stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. The doll's eyes seemed to meet hers, as if it had been waiting. She shook her head and snapped a picture. "Just a doll," she whispered. But as she turned to leave, the rocking chair creaked. She froze. The air felt heavier, thicker. Turning slowly, she pointed her flashlight back at the chair. The doll's head was tilted now, its glassy eyes staring directly at her. Claire's heart raced. "Okay," she said aloud, trying to steady her voice. "Someone's been here messing around. It's just a trick." She moved closer, examining the doll. There were no wires, no mechanism, nothing that explained how it could have moved. Her flashlight flickered, and for a moment the attic was plunged into darkness. When the light returned, the doll was no longer in the chair. It was on the floor, closer to her. Claire stumbled backward, her pulse pounding in her ears. "This isn't funny," she shouted into the empty attic. The doll's mouth, a thin line of painted lips, seemed to curve into a faint smile. And then Claire heard it, a soft giggle, like that of a child, but hollow and distant, as if it came from the walls themselves. She backed away, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The air grew colder, and the giggle turned into a whisper, inaudible at first, then clearer. "Stay and play?" "No," Claire muttered, her voice shaking. "No, I'm leaving." She turned to the attic door, but it slammed shut with a force that made her scream. She threw herself against it, twisting the knob, but it wouldn't budge. Behind her, the sound of tiny footsteps echoed on the wooden floor. Claire spun around, and the doll was standing. It wasn't possible. Its porcelain legs didn't bend, didn't move. But there it was, upright, its head cocked to one side. The whispers grew louder, filling the attic with an overwhelming cacophony of voices, each pleading, laughing, or screaming. Claire pressed her hands to her ears, tears streaming down her face. The doll took a step forward. "I don't believe in this," Claire shouted. "You're not real." The doll's glassy eyes glinted, and the whispers stopped. For a moment, the attic was silent, the air thick with tension. Then the doll spoke. Its voice was high and childlike, but there was something ancient and malevolent beneath it. "You should believe." The flashlight died, plunging Claire into darkness. Her screams echoed through the house, spilling into the night. When the townspeople found Claire's car the next day, the house was empty, save for the doll in the attic. It sat in its rocking chair, its porcelain face cracked into what looked like a smile. No one ever found Claire. But sometimes, late at night, passersby swore they could hear the faint sound of giggling coming from the attic.